Thank you all for the support, especially our friends who supported the channel financially, and get 2,000 like. After Minjuri killed the orcs, her admiration for Black Scythe's skills was renewed. Then Ryu said, "Let's continue." She said happily, yes, and she felt how fortunate she was to have teamed up with Black Scythe. Then they kept moving, and while that, Ryu continued to cut off the orcs' legs and hands, and Minjuri's only task was to deliver the fatal blow to them. And Minjuri said, "I never knew hunting could be this easy, and if an orc had witnessed this, it might have choked on disbelief, quite literally." Then Ryu inquired, "How many have we dispatched thus far?" Minjuri replied, her voice full of pride, 52 in just 30 minutes. That's impressively fast, isn't it?" Ryu Min chose not to respond, for by his own standards it was merely efficient, not exceptional. After all, he used to take down a staggering 300 in an hour, a feat that had now become second nature. Yet the time spent wandering was too long, he contemplated. The monster population in these fields is far from abundant, and the act of killing them was almost effortless. But the true challenge lay in the hunt itself. Then he said to himself, "But it's a risky proposition to wander too far, especially with Minjuri by my side, and it seems I must head towards the orc shaman. That way I can expedite the process of locating orcs, as the orc shaman possessed the ability to summon his brethren. By employing this resource, Ryu Min could bypass the laborious task of tracking down individual orcs. Besides, the path to the shaman's lair aligns with their current trajectory. If they stick to the plan, they should make good progress, and they could dispatch a few orcs along the way while approaching the boss's domain." Then Minjuri smiled brightly and said, "At this pace, we could conceivably tally up 300 within 3 hours. Ryu said to her, 3 hours is too lengthy. Let's aim for under 1 hour. Perplexed, Minjuri queried, "Huh? Just 1 hour?" And she concerned that she might have misheard, so she sought clarification, but she received the same response. As Ryu said, "I intend to complete the quest in less than an hour." Minjuri said in amazement, "Really? How?" Ryu replied, "By making use of the orc shaman," and he revealed his strategy to her, saying, "Utilizing the orc shaman to summon orcs and reach the 300 mark without eliminating the shaman. Essentially, a tactic to maximize gains by keeping the shaman alive." But suddenly, Minjuri asked a serious question as she said, "But how did you know about the orc shaman? You've never encountered it before, right?" Without missing a beat, Ryu Min concocted a seamless lie. "I encountered it briefly before meeting you, which is how I know its location." This answer was enough to convince Minjuri. Then Ryu said, "Don't worry. I'll safeguard against all potential threats." At that moment, Minjuri's initial surprise gave way to a warm smile. "Surprisingly considerate," she remarked. "Perhaps, as the saying goes, you only truly know someone once you talk to him." After a while, they arrived at a quaint village adorned with modest wooden huts. It was not extensive, and there were no orc sentinels in sight, and Minjuri voiced her astonishment, for the village consisted of no more than 5 huts, saying, "A boss in this tiny village?" However, appearances could be deceiving. Ryu Min knew this was a trap set to lure unsuspecting players. Entering might seem easy, but players who underestimate it often fall victim to the orcs summoned by the orc shaman. And a similar scenario had unfolded in the previous regression. As he circled behind the village, he discovered a mountain of player corpses concealed by the cunning orc shaman. It was a testament to his intelligence and malevolence. But in essence, it signifies cowardliness. He lacks the courage to engage in open combat. Without his orc summons, he's a mere pushover, and while Ryu could easily eliminate the orc shaman, he intended to keep him alive, at least for now, to aid in their hunting efforts. Then Ryu took the lead and said to Minjuri, "Come this way." She followed him and looked around, but she couldn't even see a single orc, and said, "How come I can't see the orcs?" But that was natural because orcs don't live here. Only the orc shaman lives here. After passing 3 or 4 thatched houses, they came across a large thatched house that was different from before. Then Ryu said, "Inside this place hides the orc shaman, quietly crafting traps, lying in wait for our entry." Minjuri queried, "The orcs set traps?" Ryu replied, "Indeed. As a boss, he possesses a measure of intelligence. These seemingly innocuous huts here are just disguises, designed to lure players in. In reality, This village harbors none but the orc shaman. And in the end, this entire village is a trap, meticulously set to ensnare and dispatch players. Then Minjuri said anxiously, "So, have we fallen into the trap?" Ryu nodded affirmatively and said, "At least in the eyes of the orc shaman." Minjuri inquired, "Do you have a plan?" Ryu answered, "Yes, we can turn his trap against him." And he continued, saying, "The trap is simple. Inexperienced players entering the house will trigger trap points. At that moment, the waiting orc shaman summons orcs to overwhelm them. About 10 to 20 orcs are summoned, and when surrounded, there's no escape." In fact, Ryu, of course, felt confident he could handle any number of orcs. Then Minjuri said in worried, "But if they all come out simultaneously, it could get troublesome." Ryu said with smile, "That's true, but there's a solution." And he detailed his plan for luring out the orcs. Minjuri's eyes widened as she listened and said in amazement, "So, it really can be that simple? And do you think the orc shaman will fall for it?" Ryu replied, "Don't be afraid. The plan has already been tested." With doubt in her eyes, Minjuri seemed to have made up her mind and nodded. "I'll take care of the first part of the plan." Ryu raised an eyebrow and said, "Alone?" She replied, "Yes. It's unnecessary for both of us to risk entrapment. It would appear suspicious, wouldn't it? Besides, I've grasped the intricacies of our strategy and am confident in executing it flawlessly. I aim to prove my worth." When Minjuri offered to take on the task, Ryu-min didn't object further and said, "All right, I'll wait outside." And with a mixture of resolve and apprehension, Minjuri pushed open the creaking door of the hut, stepping into the unknown alone. She cautiously entered alone, and there was no sign of anyone inside, no indication of any presence. Each step echoed on the wooden floor as she cautiously advanced, and she entered a spacious area. In this space, 20 orcs could easily fit in. Then she said to herself, "This must be the trap point that Black Scythe mentioned," and she swallowed nervously as she recalled the plan she had heard just moments ago. As Ryu said to her, "Inside, there's an orc shaman hidden. He's only focused on the sound of the door opening and footsteps, waiting for humans to come in, so we can use that to our advantage, deceive him, and corner the orcs. The method is simple. If you go a bit further, you'll reach an area with a red carpet. That's the trap point the orc shaman prepared. The moment you step on it, he summons orcs to block your escape. About 10 to 20 orcs will be summoned, and when they surround you, there's no way out. You'll go only as far as the carpet and then immediately leave the room. Afterward, the orcs will think they missed their prey and send a few scouts to lure us back. All we need to do is capture those scouts." Then Minjuri said to herself, "That sounds simple enough. I'll give it a try." After several steps, she arrived, reached the red carpet, and made a noise to signal her presence. Then she quickly turned around without looking back and exited the room. And she let out a long sigh and said, "It's not a big deal, but it's making me nervous for no reason." As she was catching her breath, she suddenly looked up and saw Ryu-min casually looking at the door. And he said to her, "Are you okay?" She said happily, "Yes," and I followed the plan and reached the red carpet. Ryu said, "Good, that's enough." But Minjuri wondered, would the orcs really send scouts after us? Ryu replied, "We'll find out if we wait." A moment later, the door opened. Part ends here, so please don't forget, like and subscribe.